I'm Captain Hoff, CEO of Founderspace, the leading global startup accelerator. I'm also author of the award-winning books, Make Elephants Fly, Surviving a Startup, and The 5 Forces. The art of public speaking. When I began my career, I was a terrible public speaker. In fact, I dreaded going on stage and giving a talk in front of an audience. I didn't know what to do, and I got so nervous. I was actually shaking when I would get up there. All the way through college, I had been a very shy person. So it took a huge leap for me to start stepping forward and actually giving public talks. I did this because I became the CEO of my own company, and I had to talk to the public. I had to talk to investors. I had to talk to the press. I had to go to conferences and give keynotes. It was a long learning process. It didn't happen overnight, but because I wasn't a natural public speaker, I had to analyze everything I did to improve my skills. And I hope to share that with you today. Tell a good story. One of the first things I learned when giving public speeches is the importance of storytelling. Human beings learn through stories. If you look at anything we do, whether we watch movies, whether we watch the nightly news, whether we read the newspaper, it's all stories. Even the Wall Street Journal, which is a financial publication, it's supposed to give you the data and information about all these companies. It does so in stories because that's how we retain the information and that's how we relate to it and can refer back to it. We put everything in our lives. Our brains put everything we experience in our lives into stories. We are constantly telling ourselves stories. So when somebody gets up there and gives a talk and they're just giving you the facts, usually you'll forget most of them, 90% of them. But if they start to put these facts into the context of a story that you can relate to, the percentage of information you retain will go much higher, exponentially higher. You can also, by storytelling, engage your audience. People love stories. We love the human side of things. We don't just want the numbers, the information. We want to actually understand who the people are. So when I am presenting during any presentation now, I try to embed stories into the presentations as well as just information. And let me give you an example of the power of storytelling. This is an example that happened to me personally. I was invited to give a pitch presentation. It was a big contest, a huge contest nationwide from startup founders. And at the time, I had a startup. We were making educational games. And I really wanted to win this because the grand prize was $1 million. They weren't investing in your company. They would literally hand you a check for $1 million if they liked what you were doing. So I got up there and told a great story about financial literacy. And this was during the 2008 financial crisis when many people were losing their homes. So I tied it into the current events about how we need to teach our children through financial literacy what they need to know so they don't take out mortgages they can't pay back. When I was done with my presentation, it was in Las Vegas in front of a big audience, I felt I had really hit a home run. But what I didn't realize is that there was one person, one competitor, who had a better story than me. He came up there and told how his startup was helping people who were suffering from dementia. And because his father was suffering from dementia, that's what inspired him personally to launch his startup. At the end of the day, he won first prize, I won second prize. Both of them were very good, but I will tell you, he had a better story. It was hard for the judges to know whose technology was better, whose market was better, whose, everything else about our companies, which was better, how our products were. They couldn't tell those things, but they could tell the story and the impact it made on them. The bottom line is people are emotional. They will respond emotionally to what you give them. And when they walk away from your talk, they will remember what they feel, much more than what their brain heard. Well, the information and facts. Those information and facts won't be nearly as important. And I have pitched lots of investors. I help hundreds of startups around the world present their companies to investors to raise money. And I will tell them, look, the story is more important than any data you're going to give these investors. They're going to forget 70% or more of all the data you give them. What I want you to focus on is moving them as a person, getting them engaged in your company, in your mission, in your vision. Why does this matter to you? What are you doing in the world that is so important that them giving money will make a difference? Because investors are people at the end of the day. They may be from Harvard or MIT, they may be quants and geeks and, say they only look at the numbers. But from personal experience, from being an investor myself, I can tell you that the story ends up mattering more than the investors. And if you look at companies out there, companies that we all follow, that catch the headlines, when they first launched, there was always a great story about them. Whether it was Facebook starting out of its dorm, and getting college students, connecting college students, whether it was YouTube allowing anybody to put up a video, whether it was a story of Uber, wow, anybody can become a driver and we're totally flipping the transportation industry on its head, whether it's Airbnb, all of these companies, all of these amazing companies, their stories, and many, many, many stories keep coming out about these companies, little stories, big stories. It's the story that drives the news. It's the story that drives awareness. It's the story that propels growth. Whatever you're doing, there should be a story behind it. And I don't care what you're doing, right? But when you're getting up there presenting yourself, if you're a motivational speaker, if you run a small business, if you run a big corporation, you have got to be a storyteller. I mean, look at the great storytellers like Elon Musk. He's brilliant. He's always coming up with something. And he's painting this vision about how he's going to take humanity to Mars. These stories are what drive these businesses. And you look around in society, there are so many stories to choose from. We see these social trends, these stories that we're all telling ourselves at any given time. Everybody's talking about the story. If you can pick up on one of these trends and actually bring it into your business and make that trend in your business fit perfectly, then your presentation will really begin to resonate with people. You want to touch people about what they already care about. It's very hard to make somebody care about something that they never really heard of or they don't care about. If they don't care about it, changing somebody's mind is really hard. But tapping into what they already care about and then showing how what you're doing connects to that, very powerful for storytelling. So when you're thinking of your story, I will tell you, think back on your personal experience, the struggles you had. We can all relate to that. We all struggle. Think about all the different things going on around you in society, in life, things that people are really passionate about. And then go to your business and talk to your customers. They have stories to tell. What are you doing for them? Does your product do something for them that they could never get otherwise? This is where great public speaking comes from. So whatever topic, if you're working for a philanthropic organization, a nonprofit, a government organization, a private company, it doesn't matter. At some point, you're going to have to go out and communicate with the world. You're going to have to get people on board, and nothing is more important than the story. Speak slowly and clearly. When you're giving a talk, it's really important to slow down. More often than not, people who are giving presentations get nervous and they talk too fast. But they can do a much better job, especially if it's a complex subject, especially if they're giving people ideas they need to absorb and they're hearing it for the first time. They need to process this. You might already understand these ideas. You know them. You've been thinking about them for a long time. But for other people, they may be brand new. And they actually need time as you're speaking to digest this information. So slowing down almost never hurts. Also, you may have an accent. You may be from another part of the country where you have an accent and the people listening to you may not be clued into that accent. So it may be harder for them to understand you. You may even be from overseas and you might be, your natural language, your first language might be a foreign language. In this case, you really have to slow down. And you really have to work on articulating the words clearly so that other people in the audience can get what you're talking about, not only the information, but actually even understand what you're saying. I do a lot of public speaking, and you can see, like even now, I'm taking special care. I normally talk much faster. I talk really, really fast, in fact. But in this case, when I'm giving a talk, especially in front of a large audience or on a video, I'm always moderating my pace intentionally. It helps to practice this. Remember, you kind of want to tune in to somewhere in the middle. You want to tune in so that the people process information really fast, who kind of get it right away. You don't want it to be so slow that they are bored and they tune out. And then you don't want to be so fast that the people who need more time to grok what you're saying, to really go over it or understand your accent, you don't want to leave them, lost behind where they can never catch up. That is the goal. Experiment, try practicing, practice on other people, practice in front of a video, and it will become more natural for you to speak at a pace that the majority of people out there, from wherever they are in the world, can understand exactly what you're saying. Practice and forget. When giving a public talk, it's really important that you understand how to prepare for that talk. Now, I want to share with you some of my techniques for actually preparing for a talk. What I recommend is that you don't stick to a script. A lot of people will write down a detailed script of everything they want to say. And when they get up there, some people will actually read it. Other people will recite it from their memory. But either way, it never comes across as natural, unless they are just an incredible actor. And I'll tell you, I'm not that good an actor. I can't do that. I can't stick to a script. If I do that, I can't express myself. And for most people, they're the same way. It's much better if you speak naturally, even if you go off script, even if you don't get across all the information. Now, this is key. A lot of people, when they're giving public talks, they feel it's all about the information. They have to make sure that they don't leave anything out. This can heighten your stress level because you're always thinking in the back of your mind, am I missing something? And then if you do miss something in the middle of a talk, it can totally throw you for a loop. You can be flustered. You're like, what was that? What was I supposed to say? And then you just freeze up there. You freeze. I've had that happen. So in order to avoid that, I now understand that the audience there they don't really care about all the information. In fact, they won't even know if you left something out. They just won't know unless they've heard you talk many, many times before. Then they might know, but they still probably won't care. So the bottom line is the audience is there to see you. They are there to gain information. And what's really important is that your presentation conveys the information in a way that gets them excited, that makes them pay attention, that gets their neurons in their brain firing. If you can do this, you can have a successful talk. Because think about all the talks you've ever seen. You'll retain a small bit of information now about those different talks, but the biggest thing that you remember is the speaker, right? Was it a great talk? Was I excited? Or was I falling asleep or on my phone or whatever it was? Could I not wait for that person to get off stage? What you want, the talks you remember are the great ones, the ones that really stimulated you at the time. Those are the ones you'll go back to. Those are the ones that you care about. So when you're giving your own presentation, my technique is, first of all, make a script. Put down, I don't write a detailed script of every word I'm going to say, but I make bullet points of all the main topics that I want to cover in the talk. What do I want to convey? What is the structure of the talk? All of that is laid out. And then I practice. I'll practice several times. I'm not a big one for practice. Some people need to practice more. I tend to like to just go with it. That's my style. But honestly, I instruct a lot of entrepreneurs on how to give pitch presentations, in front of big audiences and directly to investors. And when I do that, I tell them, practice, practice, practice. And then when you're all done practicing, throw it all out. Remember, when you get in front of that audience, when you get on stage, just say whatever comes into your head. Honestly, it will be better than anything you have written down, because it'll come out in the natural way. You can mix things up. And if you trip up, if you mess up, like you really mess up, don't be afraid to admit it. Like if you mess up, it can make you more relaxed to just say, look, and I've done this. I forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? Oh, well, forget about it. I'll move on. You just do that. Like even when I'm speaking to you now, I don't have a script, right? But I did make bullet points. I know generally the concept I want to get across from you. And then whatever starts to come, let it come. This is the one way I have found that you can give a really animated talk. And you can also, what's wonderful about it is that every talk you give is a little different because, some days I will relate experience that I had the previous day. Whatever example pops into my head, it won't always be the same one. So if people come hear my talk multiple times, they're often like, oh, it's a different talk, even though it's pretty much the same talk. I'm just using different examples and varying it slightly. And also by that process, I get to learn, I get to try new things, see how it works. So that is my advice. When preparing for a talk, practice, 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 and then forget. Know your audience. Whenever you do public speaking, one of the things to consider is who is your audience? Really, who are they? Have you researched it? Do you know much about them? Where do they come from? Why are they here at this conference or wherever you're speaking? What do they hope to get out of it? This is the most important thing. When audiences come, they are doing it for a reason. They are actually coming to a conference, they're coming to an event, they're coming to hear you because there's something particular that they want to know or understand. And if you don't understand what they want to get out of hearing you talk, then you're going to give them something they don't need or don't want, and it's a waste of their time. Remember, an audience could be doing something better. They could be enjoying themselves. They could be off on vacation. They could be hard at work. They could be with their family, but they're choosing to be with you. So the last thing you should do when they get in front of you is try to sell them something. Honestly, I see a lot of speakers up there who spend a huge amount of time talking about their product and kind of pushing whatever they have, their product or service, on the audience. The audience doesn't care. If they wanted to buy your product or service, they could go online, do research, and buy it. What they're there for usually is to learn something. Even if it's a conference about a particular product, they already a lot of times have bought your product. What they want to do is learn. There's knowledge that they are seeking that can improve their life. So put in your head, your number one goal is not to sell yourself or sell any products you have. Your number one goal in front of an audience is to focus on the audience and actually help them, give them something. It's not about you. Remember, the presentation isn't about you. If they remember you, like they remember you because you actually help them achieve a goal or find a solution or make their life better. So when preparing your talk, focus on this. Everything you say should be aligned towards that. How can I help them get what they want? In order to do that, you have to do some research. A lot of times you think people are coming to a certain event for one reason, but actually they're coming for another reason. There's something in their head that they want to get out of it. And I will tell you, I give lots of talks all over the world. I'm always traveling and giving talks. And every time I am always focused on value. What value can I provide the audience? And I will do extra research on a subject, especially sometimes I'm invited to speak on subjects that I'm not an expert on. But the conference, I'm well known, they want me there, I'm a decent speaker. But so before I go, I will spend a lot of time looking at the types of people. Are they coming from big corporations? Are they independent entrepreneurs? Are they, housewives? Are they elderly people? Who's coming to this event? Is it the general public? And what do they expect to get out of the event? So I will actually make a talk much more sophisticated. If all the people in the audience are scientists or I'm at a university, I'll tailor it towards students. Whatever it is, I will tailor my standard talk always towards the people who are going to be consuming it. And then I want to make sure I look at the other speakers. Who else is going to be speaking and what are they going to be giving the audience. Because remember, if the speaker before you gives the audience all the information they need and all you're doing is repeating it, you're not adding much value. You're adding nothing. So look at the whole thing. Look at the whole schedule for whatever event you're on, all the different speakers and they're getting. Make sure that what you offer is something unique, something they aren't getting from the other speakers, something they haven't read on the web or heard before. You need to give them something special. A lot of times that's from your personal experience, what you've done. But other times it's just research or knowledge that gaps that aren't being covered and that would be very, very valuable to them to walk away with. So my advice to you is you can't do too much prep work. You can't spend too much time before you go public speaking at any event or in any situation. Know your audience. Be bold and forceful. I can't emphasize this enough. I go around and I hear public speakers all the time. I work with translators, and the translators, like in many different countries, they will become my voice. They are me when they're speaking. And the one piece of advice I give them before they do it is don't be shy. Be bold and forceful. It's better for you to err on the bold and forceful side than to be too timid. If you're insecure, and trust me, I explained to you already, I was a shy guy. I know what it's like to be shy, but you wouldn't know it now because I've overcome that. I've changed myself, but I lived that. So I know what it's like. I empathize. But if you speak softly, if you are hesitant, people pick up on that. They pick up on that. And then all the power of what you're saying drains away. It's really important, to psych yourself up, to honestly, before you go into a talk, if you need this, I don't need it anymore, but in the beginning I did. If you need this, to say to yourself, remind yourself, go up there, state everything clearly, boldly, and project your voice. Push your voice out there, right? People want to feel that energy. Giving a talk in public isn't like just talking to someone in person. It is performing like an opera singer, like a rock star, an actor. You on stage in theater, you are performing, which means you have to project, especially if it's like a large stadium, a public area. People want to see that performance, and that performance comes from your gut. So I can recommend that you do speech training. People can benefit a lot from speech training, from how to speak authoritatively. And you don't have to shout, right? You don't have to be up there screaming and yelling to get your point across. But you do have to convey that forcefulness so that you have some presence on stage and so that it resonates and moves people. That is my advice. And if you feel shy, it's okay. It doesn't matter how you feel inside. It's what you project outside that matters. So focus on your words and how you can get them out of your mouth and how each word can have an impact on the audience. Don't leave anything up to chance. When you are speaking in public at an event, you need to prepare in advance. This means going in either the night before or well before your actual presentation and running tests. You can never trust them to do everything perfectly. Let me tell you, I've been through this. I give hundreds of presentations, and almost always when I don't check, something goes wrong. You need to go through your PowerPoint presentation on their computer, because often they will make changes to your PowerPoint presentation at the last minute without telling you, or things will be missing. Sometimes when you copy one file from one computer to another computer, graphics are missing, video is missing, something has changed. And unless you go through every single slide right before the presentation, you are taking an unnecessary risk, which can be really disconcerting when you're on stage. Also, ask in advance for the type of microphone you want. I prefer wireless microphones, and not just wireless, the ones that go around your head, and so that you don't have anything to hold in your hands. Ideally, your hands should be free so you can express yourself, and you should be free. You shouldn't be tethered to a cord so you can walk around. The further in advance you request these things, the better. Even well before the event, you should already know what you want. Do you want to speak in the morning? Usually you don't want to speak in the afternoon. What time slot do you want to speak? How long do you want to speak? All of these things should be specified well in advance of your presentation. I keep a checklist now of everything I need to do 2 weeks before the event, everything I need to do the night before the event, everything I want to check the day before the event. And I make sure to get these done. If you don't write them down, if you don't have a checklist, you probably will be caught off guard at some point and your presentation won't go well. It takes a little bit of effort, a little bit, but the payoff is big. Make your entrance. Most people don't think about this when public speaking, how important it is the first impression people get, how you step onto stage. If you see great performers, like Elvis or any of these, you will see that when they enter that stage, it's all choreographed. You should choreograph your own. Why not? Some people just shuffle up onto stage and they're kind of like sloppy and it's not well thought out. What you want to do when you get on stage is you want to enter the stage with energy. Like I always say, kind of don't run, but don't walk. Somewhere in between a run and walk, quickly step up onto stage and then step with decisive steps. Just like I said, speak forcefully, speak boldly, stepping, every step you take, everything you do is communicating to the audience. You are prepping them, psychologically prepping them for a great talk or not so great talk. So they're watching you. The second you appear, they are watching you. You've already started your talk. So that first second, most people don't realize this, they don't understand. But us as human beings, we judge people very quickly. Within the first few seconds of meeting somebody, we will have already judged them. We'll have looked at their clothes, we'll look at their face, their makeup, their hairstyle, the expressions on their body. Even before they open their mouth, we will already have an opinion of that person. Why do humans do this? Well, I'll tell you, our survival once depended on it. If you're in the jungle and you're walking down and you meet somebody else, a stranger you don't know, you have to judge that person quickly. Are they a person you like? Should you fear them? Should you run away? Are they hostile? Are they going to kill you? These things determined whether you would live or die. So our instinct is, even before our conscious mind judges somebody, our subconscious is already forming an opinion. So everybody in the audience is judging you the second you appear on stage. And your entrance is your chance. It might only last, 5 or 10 seconds, but that is your first communication with them. Make it count. Use body language. A lot of people, when they give a talk, they get nervous. They freeze up. They try to stand perfectly still. This is the opposite of what you should do. You actually should project, not just with your voice, but with your entire body. They should illustrate the concepts you're trying to communicate. Because remember, the audience just isn't listening to you. They usually aren't just listening to your voice, unless it's a podcast. If you're on stage at a conference or you're doing a video, they're looking at your body. And a lot of times they're looking at your whole body. So it all matters. Your posture matters. Everything you do on stage communicates something to the audience. If you are on stage and your whole shoulders are hunched over, your hands are clasped together, you look very small. But if you stretch your arms out, spread them, use them actively, you look very big, very powerful to the audience. This is a tool you can use, and it's as important a tool as anything you could say, any information you could convey. Remember, it's not what you say, it's the overall impression that people feel when they hear you speak that ends up being what they remember. The information is actually a much smaller portion of what you're delivering, especially in public speaking. They are there to see you. And so think of your body, all parts of your body, everything, how you move your feet, where you stand, your gestures, your head movements, all of these are communicating. Be aware of them and use them to your advantage. Use your body. Ditch the podium. Whenever you're giving a public presentation, it's a good idea not to use a podium. Now, many times you'll go up there and they'll have a podium waiting for you. This can pose a problem. And I will tell you, great public speakers, the really good ones, never use podiums whenever possible. That is because the podium itself, even though it seems like a tool, I mean, podiums can be useful. You can put a laptop on a podium. You can put a cup of water on a podium so you can get a drink. You can have your notes on a podium. You can lean against a podium. But honestly, the disadvantages to using a podium outweigh the advantages. Let me go over a few. First of all, the podium is a barrier between you and the audience. It obstructs you from connecting with them. A lot of people think, oh, the podium is great. It reinforces me. It makes me appear more official. It makes me appear stronger. What it really does is it hides you. It's a psychological barrier keeping the audience away from you. And more than anything, the audience wants to connect with you. If they're there to see you, to see all of you. The second thing is the podium roots you in one place. It doesn't allow you the freedom to move about the stage. And really good performers, really good speakers, they move about. At one point, they may be center stage, right? At another point, they're off to the side because they want to make a point about that. Look at great speakers and you will see that they're on the move. They're not just fixed. Also, being fixed, you appear like a statue. Who wants to watch a statue when they can watch somebody move around? Thirdly, body language is essential. When you have a podium, they can't even see most of your body. A lot of times the podium is covering it up, and you're not free to express yourself in the same way you would if you didn't have the podium. For these reasons, I always tell speakers, ditch the podium, get rid of it. Make it visual. I cannot stress enough how important it is when you go out to do public speaking to spend time on the visuals. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go give a talk, so I need to put all this time into what I'm going to say. And they spend no time on the visuals. They might not even include visuals. This is a big mistake. The reason why is 65% of the people out there are visual learners. That's how they learn. That's their primary way of processing information. And if you don't include compelling visuals that speak to them, then you are missing out on over half your audience. When preparing visuals, you need to remember a couple things. First of all, the images you put up there are really important. They need to look good. The quality needs to be high. Because if the quality is poor, they'll think your presentation is poor. If those visuals look great, if they look amazing, that will reflect on what you have to say. They should also be fresh, images that people haven't seen 1,000 times. If you're going to stock photo sites, don't take the image you've seen used over and over and over in all these presentations. It's going to look cliched. It's going to reduce the quality of your talk. Pick something fresh that stimulates people. And most important, remember, the visuals have to reinforce what you're saying. They have to actually make the points visually that you are saying through your words. This way, people will remember and they will understand at a higher level what you're trying to communicate. They've actually done a number of studies on the human brain, and they have found that the brain itself, 90% of the information we process is visual. They've also found that when people are hearing something, just hearing it alone, versus when they are hearing it and seeing it, their comprehension rate goes up by 83%. 83% higher when what you're saying audio is coupled with visual. They've also found that the retention rate goes up. 3 days later, when they tested people after hearing something, they had roughly a 10% retention rate. 10%, they had lost 90% of the information. However, when that information was coupled with visuals, with relevant visuals, the retention rate went up to 65%. This is why it's so important when you are giving a talk to make it visual. 6 words or less. When you are giving a presentation and you are using a tool like PowerPoint, the rule of thumb is always try to put 6 words or less in each slide. Now, this can be tough. I'm sure you've gone to many presentations and you see their PowerPoint slides, they almost never get it down to 6 words. But I will tell you, when I go to these presentations and I see these PowerPoints and I'm trying to read the PowerPoint and listen to the presenter at the same time, it's very frustrating. People don't multitask well. Most people, they have to block out something else if they're reading. So when I am reading those slides, especially the very dense ones, I am blocking out what the speaker is saying. I could be missing valuable information. And even if I'm not, I feel like I am. And if I'm just listening to them, but ignoring the slide, I also feel like I'm missing valuable information. So the rule of thumb, if you want to create really good presentations, is to distill the essence of what you want to say down to as few words as possible. And the rest should be images, graphic images that reinforce what you're saying. Because people process graphic information almost instantly. Words they have to read, that takes time. So what people do is what you want them to do is actually when the slide comes up, they can look at the slide and within a few seconds, they could understand, they can clue in to what you're going to talk about. They read the headline, 6 words or less, they see the visuals, and then they turn their attention to you. That is what you want as a public speaker when you're making a presentation, because you're there in person. If they're going to read a lot of text and understand a lot of detail, well, they can go to your website, or you can send them a detailed business plan or sales brochure later that they can dig into. But when they're in the presentation, when you're face to face with somebody, it's totally different. It's all about connecting with you. You are what matters. That's why they're there. Don't obscure that. You'll actually end up hurting your presentation if you have them trying to juggle back and forth between getting the information on the slide and talking to you. And let me tell you, my goodness, there are some PowerPoint presentations out there that are so awful. They are crammed with text and charts and all these numbers, and some of it's so small you can't even read it even if you want to. That is just so frustrating for your audience. So go back through what you're doing anytime when you're crafting your presentation and weed everything out. Mark Twain famously said, "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter." Think about it. It takes time. People, entrepreneurs, when I'm training them to actually give their presentations at pitch events or conferences or to investors, I have to hit on them really hard. First of all, you can condense this. You can get it down to 6 words. You can do it. You can have less slides in your PowerPoint. You can do it. They usually tell me it's impossible. I can't do it. But once I put those restrictions on, once they kind of go through the process, they discover they can do it. There's so much they can take out of that. And in the end, it makes what you're saying so much more digestible. It helps clarify. It actually improves what you're saying. It's like a lot of us, we read blogs and newspapers. We'll flip through the blogs on our phone, real quickly. What are we reading? We're reading the headlines. The headlines are never too long. They're always very concise. You have to think like that because that's how people process information. And that's what makes the best presentations. Show your product. I'm not talking about just showing a visual of your product, a picture of your product, or even a video of your product. I am talking about bringing your actual product out onto stage. When you're public speaking, there's no substitute for actually showing them what it really is. So if your product is a robot, I want you to bring that robot onto stage. I want you to interact with that robot. I want you to send that robot out into the audience so they can touch it, feel it, interact with it. You would be surprised the impression you will make when they can physically see something, when they can see it from all angles. It becomes so much realer. And if they can interact with it, if they can touch it, their impression of what you do and what you are will be so much higher than if you just talk about it. But I go to pitches all the time, pitch events where entrepreneurs are pitching us. And most of the time they don't have their product. They just talking about it and maybe they're showing a few PowerPoint slides of it, but they didn't bring their product. I was like, what an opportunity you missed to really engage us. And there have been startups that are doing food technology, like inventing new types of food, and they don't bring their food. I'm like, you have investors in the room. Let us try the food. If we try your food, we will remember you, especially if it tastes amazing. Whatever you can do to connect with all 5 senses of your audience, do it. It makes an enormous difference. I have seen companies get funded simply because they make a great presentation, and others that have great products, but nobody knows because all they saw was some picture on a PowerPoint. They didn't really connect with it. They didn't really see the value. They were half falling asleep. If you want people to engage with you, if you want them to remember you, if you want them to respond with you, do this. Make it tangible for them. Bring whatever you have. If you are talking about horses and you can bring a horse on stage, trust me, or an elephant, people will remember you. People will talk about you. That will be an amazing experience. Go all the way. Stand out. When you are public speaking, one of the most important things is that people remember you. And I will tell you, I go to conferences all the time because I'm an investor. I'm in the venture capital community. I work with startups all over the world, and I'm constantly giving keynotes and things like that. So I hear a lot of other people giving their talks. And I will tell you, they all blend together. Like by the end of the day, or 2 days or 3 days, depending on how long the conference is, it's hard to remember who was who and what they said. But if any of them took the time to actually be different, to get up there and do something different, then that sticks with me. When you're walking down the street on a day, and if you see somebody walk by you and they're all in rainbow colored clothing and they're dancing along, you won't forget that person. You'll remember that person. But all those other people that walked by you that same day, you'll probably never think about them again. When you have the chance to actually capture people's attention, if it's a sales presentation, if it's a conference, if it's an investor pitch, use that opportunity so that when the day is over, the next day, they think of you. They are much more likely to take action in your favor if you give them something to remember. So what do I mean by this? Let me give you an example. I go to a lot of startup pitches, where they're pitching ideas for their startups. And there was this one company, a game startup, and they're pitching their game. Now, usually what they'll do is they'll talk about their game, they'll talk about the market, they'll talk about, how it monetizes. They may even show a video of the game, which is pretty cool. But this startup, this entrepreneur actually had us play a game. He actually engaged the audience so that it was a very simple game where, but he engaged the audience where we were asked questions and we had to answer them, and he had prizes, very simple prizes. But this whole process of using the time that he had to make an impression on the investors by actually engaging them in a game that was similar to his mobile game actually made us remember that startup, and in a favorable way. We thought, wow, this person is really creative. Wow, I want to take a look. I want to try this game. All the other startup pitches I heard after that, I forgot by the time, a week later, it was hard to remember any of them. But this one, I'm still talking about. And that is my point. Whatever you can do, if it's dressing in interesting clothing that makes people remember you, if it's something that you can say, a story you can tell, if it's visuals or something you can bring on stage, like, I work with a lot of companies and they have food, and a lot of times they'll have a PowerPoint for their food company where they'll be showing pictures of their food. Why not bring the food in and let us try it? Especially if we're thinking of investing in their business. Let us try samples of the food. If you're talking about the most incredible chocolate that was ever made, we've got to taste it. If we taste it, we'll remember it. If you're a robotics company, bring the robot onto stage. If you're doing sales, people like to touch things they touch. Let the audience interact with it. Get them involved. Make an impression. The amount of work you put into standing out can pay huge dividends. So remember, when you're giving a presentation, it's not enough to give a great presentation. A lot of people can do that. What can you do differently? How can you stand out? Watch their eyes. When you're giving a talk, there is a magic key you have to actually unlock the brains of your audience to look inside their heads and see what they're thinking, what they're feeling when they actually hear you talk. And you can do this in real time. You can do this by watching their eyes. Look at their eyes. What are their eyes telling you? Eyes are like the gateway to the soul. They actually reveal so much about what a person is feeling. You can look, and when you're giving a talk, instead of just focusing on what you're saying, actually take the time to look around the audience. What is the audience doing? Where are their eyes? Are their eyes on their phone? Are they on their phone? That's a pretty bad sign. They're probably not paying attention. They're not really listening. Are they rapt? Are they looking at you? And when you say something, when you make your points on each one of your slides, if you're giving a PowerPoint, how are they reacting? Are their eyes kind of like dazed? Are they focusing? Are they amazed? Do their eyes light up? If you see their eyes light up, you know that you're saying something that really either surprised them, amazed them, in some way it touched them. And I will tell you, when I give my own presentations, and I do this all the time, I'm always doing two things at once. I'm focused on giving the best presentation I can possibly give. But at the same time, I am monitoring the audience. I'm looking from face to face to face, and I'm getting feedback from their eyes in real time. It's like my metrics, my analytics of what I'm doing. They are telling me how I'm performing. And from that feedback, I will know after I give the presentation what I should change. If there's a certain point in the presentation where I see people kind of look away, they're not really paying attention, they're drifting off, I'll know I need to modify that. I need to change that because that isn't working. And if I see certain parts of the presentation where the audience actually leans forward, they're really excited, then all of a sudden I know that's a gem. I've got to keep that in my presentation. And presentations to me are never done. I'm never done working on a talk. Every single time I give a talk, I review it in my head afterwards. I review what I felt and how I felt I did, and I review the data I was receiving in real time and correlate those, and then I start to think about how can I improve this. To me, giving presentations is an iterative process. You're always iterating, you're always improving, you're always getting better. This is how you become a better public speaker. You don't just try it once, and if it works, keep doing the same thing over and over. No, you're constantly modifying, making changes, getting feedback, getting improvement, and then working to perfect it. That is the thing. And the eyes of your audience, watching their eyes, is the gateway to their emotions and what it means to them. And at the end of the day, what your talk means to your audience is all that matters. They're the ones consuming it. You're delivering it. You need to be in touch with them. The beauty of this technique is that as you do it, as you focus on people and look at people, you get energy. Like when their eyes light up, boom. To me, it's like a charge. I'm like, I hit them. You know, they're in tune, and you get this rapport going back and forth with your audience. So when you really get a talk working, you know it. You feel it. You can walk away. Even if the audience doesn't speak the same language, even if it's being translated, I can still tell if it's working, if it's resonating or not, just by watching their eyes. Less is more. Giving more information doesn't necessarily make a better presentation. In fact, more information works against you. Remember, people can only retain so much information. Most of us, when we go in to hear a talk, we forget 70% of what they say. We may be lucky to remember that 30% if it's really relevant to what we care about and what we're doing. When you're giving a presentation, whether it's a scientific presentation, whether it's a sales presentation, whether it's a pitch to investors to raise money, whatever it is, it pays to simplify. It pays to give them less and to focus on the things that really matter. Most of the information in your business, or most of the information about a product you're selling, or scientific invention that you have, most of the details, the audience you're talking to doesn't need to know. They don't even care about. And often they aren't even capable of understanding. You're in it. You know all these details. They all seem so important to you. But to other people, most of them, they just want the big picture. They want to know what's going on. If they're at a conference or whatever, they want to get the big picture. That's more important to them than the minutia. So when you're talking, think of your audience, understand what they need from you, and crystallize those ideas, those concepts, and bring them to them as elegantly as possible. If you can do this, it'll make an enormous difference in how they engage with you and what they walk away with. I will tell you, I have been to some talks where they just get so technical because, they're an engineer or a scientist, but the audience isn't engineers or scientists. It tends to be a general audience, but they're talking about all this technical stuff that most of us are completely clueless about. Yet the person on stage doesn't realize this. Well, these are extreme examples. But even in a product presentation where you're trying to sell customers and you're talking to them, there's certain things that really matter to the customers. And there's a lot of other things that your product may do, features it may have, that really don't matter. You need to figure this out ahead of time, narrow it down, and focus on those critical things that are actually going to move them to make a decision, that are valuable to them. Those are what matters. Remember, less is almost always more. Surprise your audience. Whenever you get onto stage, try to do something that just wakes them up, knocks them off their chair. People fall into a stupor, especially if the speakers before you were boring. It's really hard to get up there, and actually get them to pay attention. So sometimes you just have to do something strange. Like I'll dance around on stage sometimes. I'll throw up my hands. I'll make a silly joke. Sometimes I'll tell them, like I was at this big conference with 1,000 people, and the night before I'd been in my hotel room, in the hotel room that they put me in. To me, it just didn't feel clean. Like I like really clean rooms, and it didn't feel clean. And I woke up in the middle of the night and oh my God, I felt something biting on me, some little bites. And then I got out of bed and I lifted the mattress and there were bed bugs there. So when I gave my talk, I started with this story. I was like, last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and there were bed bugs and I freaked out. And I freaked out so much, I woke up again. The bed bugs were a dream. They weren't real. It was all in my head. I had actually dreamt of bed bugs. And then in my dream, I had to wake up again. It was so funny. It was so crazy, actually, experience that I felt like I had to share it with them. And that just woke them up. It was just a funny story. It was kind of off topic, but it was what really happened to me the night before. So, if you sense that your audience, has their energy is down, then figure out something to do. Pour a bottle of water on your head. I don't care what it is. Surprise them in some way. You don't have to be as crazy as I am, but do something. And your audience will appreciate it. They'll like it. It will actually get them going again. A lot of people I've seen make the audience stand up. That can be good and it can be bad. Things that people do too many times, like stand up and do jumping jacks. If you do it too many times, if people have seen it too many times, they're like, not again. When I say surprise your audience, it's don't surprise them in the way, they've already been surprised 10 times before because they're not surprised. They're just like, oh, not again. Do something totally different. Vary the pitch and tempo. When you are giving a talk, you need to pay special attention to your voice. The voice is what impacts people. It is the single most important thing. It's not the words you say, it's how you say them that moves people emotionally, gets them involved, engages them. If you are giving a talk and you speak in a monotone voice, you are not going to move your audience. You may even put them to sleep. So don't do it. You don't have to speak like that. You can practice and you can train yourself to speak in a more lively manner. I will tell you, there are certain people who naturally do it. They just naturally do it. Others have to work hard on it. So when you are talking, you need to record yourself in front of a video camera and see how you sound. See if you can emote more. See if you can express yourself more. And you can do this systematically by simply varying the pitch. Higher pitch conveys excitement. Lower pitch conveys more authority. You can also vary the tempo. If you're speaking really fast or really slow, it has a different impact on the person. When I'm giving a talk and I want somebody to really understand a specific point, I slow down. I may even pause so that emphasizes the point, so that they think about it, so that it focuses their attention. And then when I get excited, I pick up the pace. My pitch rises. I talk, as if I am excited, like right now. For you, you can do this too. Just like actors train themselves, just like singers train when they're singing, songs go the vocalists on songs, they're always varying their pitch and their tempo. It's part of the music. And when you are creating a great public presentation, when you are speaking in public, you are creating music. It is hopefully what you're saying is music to the ears of your audience. And remember, when the audience walks away from your talk, when they leave there, they're just, most of the information is going to be gone, but they will remember what they felt. So pitch, tempo, these are really important for reaching your audience, reaching their heart, and getting them involved in what you're saying. Compose a symphony. I think every talk should not only be like a song, right? Melodic and with very tempo and pitch, but it should also be a composition, an entire symphony, so that when you are presenting to the audience, you are taking them on a journey. And the journey should build. Your talk, the best talks, people get more and more excited as you go along. So basically you start out at the beginning. I like to start out strong, and then you kind of take a little dip and you build all the way to a crescendo. You hit that climax, and then at the end you come down. That is a natural arc, not just for giving a talk, not just for a symphony. Most symphonies are composed that way, but for all storytelling. If you look at scripts, if you look at movies and novels, they do the same thing. Every point that you're making in your talk should be building on the last one. And I will tell you, when I go out there and pitch investors to invest in my company, wow, by the end of my talk, they were like, they were so excited. I have this story. I was once in a top tier venture capitalist office in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I was presenting to this investor, my company. My partners and I were. And by the end of the presentation, that investor couldn't sit still. He's like, I want to invest. I want to invest. Oh my God, what do I do? And this is an investor who sees pitches all the time. They're like, what do I do? And he goes, I can't do it alone. I have to talk to my partners. And he ran out of the room, talked to his partners. His partner says, you're crazy. You can't invest on the first meeting. You just met these guys. You can't put money. We're going to have an all partners meeting. Go back and tell them no. So he came back to us and I'm so sorry. My partners wouldn't let me do this. But we knew we had perfected our presentation, right? Our presentation had built, and I can feel it building when I give a good presentation, whether it's in front of a large audience, whether it's to one individual. I can feel it when I've constructed the presentation in a way that each piece builds on the next, and by the end, they are feeling like that climax themselves. And usually, especially if it's a sales pitch or something like that, that climax means action. It's a call to action. So when you're designing your talk, think about the whole talk, not each point, but how it builds, and think of yourself as Mozart composing a symphony. Make a single point. When you are giving a talk to an audience, try to make one single point at a time. This sounds basic, but I'm sure you've been to many lectures where you go and the speaker might show a PowerPoint slide and there are like 5 points there. 5 separate independent points on a single slide. They're going through them. They start to get all muddled. You're like, what are they really talking about? What is the point of this slide? It's not clear what they want me to walk away with. When I structure my own presentations, I do it, my method is that I like to have presentations typically, like for a 20-minute presentation, that has 10 to 20 slides on it. That means each slide I'll spend 1 to 2 minutes. If it's a 40-minute presentation, I may still have only 20 slides, but spend 2 minutes on each. Even an hour-long presentation, I try not to have too many slides. And every slide has just one point. I want the audience, after they're done with that slide, before I go on to the next one, to walk away with one clear idea. If you give them like 5 ideas, then they end up usually just forgetting them all. Like, it's information overload. Remember, it's not how much information you give the people listening to your talk. It's the quality of the information. Focus on the quality. Focus on making an impression so that when they leave your talk, they can actually start to digest what you said. It's not just all blurred together as a muddle. You know, people are busy. They're getting too much information. The simpler, the clearer you can make it by focusing on a single topic at a time, the better. So make one point per slide when giving your presentations, and you will find that the overall impression you make, the quality of your talks will go up significantly. Afternoons equal death. I will tell you, in the afternoon when people are tired, if you go up to speak in the afternoon, it's so hard. It's so hard to get people out of that funk. You know, they've done studies and they have found that the best time to speak is like in the morning after breakfast. That's like the best time. If you can be the first speaker in the morning, great. The closer you get to lunch, the more people start to fade out. And the hungrier they get, their blood sugar drops, their attention drops. Same in the afternoon. Right after lunch, pretty good. Not as good as in the morning, because a lot of times people are a little tired, especially if they ate a big lunch, they can be tired. But it's still better than later in the afternoon. You get around 4 or 5, people are falling asleep. Really, when you schedule your presentations, think about this. If you're giving a talk, try to make it first thing in the morning or after lunch. Those are the best times. They actually did a study in Israel with judges, and these judges were supposed to parole prisoners. And the judges, and they found statistically, they looked at the statistics, and they found out that those prisoners who came to the judges early in the morning or just after lunch had a much higher chance of being paroled than the ones that came to the judges later in the day when the judges were tired, when they were hungry, when their blood sugar was down. Now, the judges, when they interview them, they say, no, we're totally impartial. We would never base our decision on how we feel. That's not true. That's impossible. Humans always base their decision on how they feel. Always. We don't even know we're doing it. It's unconscious. So when you're scheduling an event, keep this in mind. Afternoons are death. Never stop experimenting. One of the things I learned, and one of the things that helped me become a better public speaker, was that I was always pushing my limits. I was always trying new things. I was always learning from my mistakes. But in order to do that, I had to make mistakes. I had to try things I had never tried before just to see if they would work. So I'm telling you, whenever you get up on stage, think of this as not only an opportunity to give a great public performance, a great presentation, but think of it as an opportunity to learn something new. This is especially true if you end up giving the same speech over and over. A lot of times when you're doing sales pitches or sales presentations, you'll be doing the same thing over and over and over. A lot of times when you're invited to conferences to give keynotes and things like that, people will expect a certain type of talk out of you, and you'll end up falling into the rut. I know when I give the same talk over and over and over, I get really bored. I lose my enthusiasm. It ends up just coming out mechanically. So what I've learned to do is, instead of just doing that, when I get up there, I will improvise. I will create opportunities for me to try new things. I will say whatever comes into my mind. Or if I've been thinking about something or experienced something in the past week or so, I will incorporate that into my talk, like whatever current events are going on. Whatever is happening in my business at the time, whatever experience I had, if I was, had an experience the week before or the day before, I will incorporate that into my talk. It makes it feel so much more relevant and so much more real. And then I will see how the audience reacts. I'll get their feedback and I will iterate again. And the good stuff I'll keep. The stuff that didn't work so well, I'll throw out. When I push my limits, go out on an edge. A lot of times it turns out not so good, but that process of learning how far I can go stretches me as a speaker and as a person. And in the end result, in the long run, will make you, if you do it, much better. I hope you enjoyed the talk. If you liked it, you can come to founderspace.com. You can check out our latest events, contact us, and see my latest books, Make Elephants Fly, Surviving a Startup, and The 5 Forces. You can also find me on all the major social networks. Just search for Founderspace.